Morning, honorable members. Good morning, Deputy Minister. I'm sure it's you. The minister is not around. Good morning. Good morning, Chairperson of Eskom and Team Eskom. Members of the staff. Good morning. Members of the media who are joining us today. South Africans who are watching this interaction between the Standing Committee on Appropriations and Eskom and the Department of Public Enterprises as a shareholder to shareholder rep at Eskom. You are all welcome. A very important meeting to all of us, especially because it's the mercury has just gone down these days, and it's very, very cold, I think, throughout the country. So I'm sure we wouldn't have chosen a better time to interact with Eskom. I won't be taking a lot of time because I would like to give the Deputy Minister and Eskom to start interacting with us. We did send an invitation to Eskom, and we made an indication of the areas that we wanted them to cover. We sent the letter to the Minister, Public Enterprises. I think the Deputy Minister also excited that letter. So that's it's a follow-up to the meetings that we have had before. Well, the Standing Committee on Appropriations, just so that we can recap, and we always say that anyone and everyone who gets money from government, it's our client. In fact, Prof, before Eskom would come to government and get recapitalization, they were not appearing before this committee. But once you start asking money from us, it's like sending an invitation to us. So that's the background. We have gone through the presentation, DM, quite an elaborate presentation, and would like, so we'll give you time limits and have that at the back of your minds that very detailed, that we have read that. And let me make an example. For instance, a slide which talks to what you applied for at NERSA and what you got. It's quite a detailed slide. But for instance, if you were to summarize the slide, we'll say that's how much we wanted. That's the tariff that we wanted. That's what we're given, and that's the impact of that, and what you are going to be doing about it. But if you go to the slide, it's quite detailed. It talks about all the kilowatts and so on and so forth. So, honorable members, allow me to hand over to the Deputy Minister, Honorable Maswale, and the team Eskom. Would like to say to you, maximum, you don't have to take all the time, but we are giving you up to 10 o'clock. We'll be doing listening in the and we promise not to interrupt you, not unless there's really something that we say. But I think let's just allow you, DM and your team to go. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair, and greetings to the honorable members of the committee. I will likewise, Chair, welcome the opportunity and indicate forthwith that I will let the interim chair to really take on the presentation. And you have already noted the minister's absence. Today, there is a couple of meetings that are sitting. We have shared the responsibilities for the attendance to the different meetings. So that accounts for the absence of Minister Kotan. The Professor Makhoba is here with the team from Eskom. Perhaps I should just, without wasting any time, invite them to take the stage in the time you have availed, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair, Deputy Minister, and honorable members of SCOA. It's a great opportunity that we have been given to come and present, I think, to your committee. You have given us a mandate, and we have prepared ourselves accordingly. We have sent our documents to yourselves. They are quite extensive, but it would be important, I think, for the team of Eskom that is going to present to highlight only those issues that are relevant, because the details are there in the narrative and also in the presentations of the slide. The team will be commanded by the GCE, Mr. Andre de Ruyter, and I'll give him the opportunity to start the presentation. But as the chair has indicated, we should be done with by 10 o'clock, and everybody must simply select those slides that highlight the important issues that the committee should grapple with, rather than every slide that you have prepared. Thank you, Chair, Deputy Minister, and honorable committee members. I will hand over now to Mr. Andre de Ruyter to start the presentation. Thank you.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, and good morning also to the Honourable Chair, Honourable Deputy Minister, Honourable members. As the Prof has said, it's a privilege and honour for us to present to you. We are going to try and be as brief as possible. We do have a lot of ground to cover. We've tried to share as much information as possible. And we will now start with our presentation. The agenda clearly is as per the questions raised by SCOA. And without further ado, I would like to hand over to our Chief Financial Officer, Caleb Kassim, to start with his section of the presentation. Thank you, Honourable Chair.
Good morning, Honourable Chairperson, members of the committee, Deputy Minister, ladies and gentlemen, thanks. I'm going to try to do the finance section in about 10 minutes. Chair, I think the first important slide is slide 3. Just to recap for the committee members, if we can move to the next slide. Yes, over the period since 2008, if you go back one slide there, Natasha, it just shows that the support that Eskom has received from government, from the 60 billion initially loan and in the conversion, a subsequent 23 billion equity support in 2015-16. And then as the committee has appropriated in the last financial year, 49 billion, and then we've built in the 56 billion for this financial year. Honourable Chairperson, this totals 188 billion rand of support for Eskom over the period, which we are very appreciative to ensure we can meet our debt service commitments as and when they become due. Here, if we then move on, I think just to touch on slide 5, if we skip that, next slide. I think this is an important slide in terms of the requirements of the appropriation, Chair, for the last financial year. You will see the cash flow statement is firstly draft because it's not yet, we haven't completed our audit. What we're highlighting here, Chairperson, is that from an inflow perspective for the last financial year, Eskom generated 36.2 billion rand from its cash from operations. And then with the government support of 49 billion, which flowed during the course of the year, it used that to cover the debt service commitments of 70.6 billion, with some of the balance then coming from our cash from operations. Chairperson, you will also see that over the last financial year, effectively Eskom raised debt of 32 billion to cover our investment in capital expenditure. The point I'm highlighting here, Chair, and the critical requirement of the appropriation and the support from government, we need to use the government support to service our principal debt as well as the interest, which we've done in the last financial year ended March 2020. And just to highlight the importance and the need again during this financial year, our debt service commitments for FY21, our principal and our interest adds up to 95 billion, of which we will utilize 56 billion from the support, and then our cash from operations that we generate and further debt funding. If we can then move on to slide 8, Natasha, thank you. Continue. I think, stop here? Yeah. Okay, you can leave it here. I think, Chair, what's important, we know that the 3 funds of that we generate our cash from is obviously the operations which I've highlighted in the cash flow. Then Eskom raises debt based on what's the market appetite and what our balance sheet can carry, and together with the equity support. But I think at the end of this, it ultimately comes into the amount of revenue one generates, because from that revenue, you need to then service your debt service commitments, as well as then get to a situation where you can generate enough returns to return to the shareholder in the form of dividends. What we're trying to just highlight here, honorable members, is that in terms of the policy environment, firstly, the electricity pricing policy in 2008 that stated Eskom should, the tariffs should reach cost reflectivity within 5 years. And even what we see on the outlook currently, we don't get to that level by 2023. I'll highlight that in some future slides. It also indicated that the regulator should produce a 10-year price spot. And again, in terms of the Electricity Regulation Act, Eskom must recover its efficient costs and earn a fair return or margin. Chairperson, if I then move on, and I'll come back to the efficient costs later in the slide, and where the prices are. If we can then move, Natasha, to the next slide 12, please. You can skip that, stop here, go one back, please. Yeah, Honorable Chairperson, I think you've highlighted this. This is just illustrating the difference between the applications that Eskom has made to the regulator from 2014 up until 2022 and what was awarded. And if we just add the difference in terms of the shortfall in revenue over the period, it's 350 billion.
Sorry, CFO, just hold. Honorable members and everybody who's in the meeting, can I request that you mute your mics? The only mic who should be active is the CFO's mic. Please, everybody who's on the platform, just mute. That's 1. 2, honorable members and everybody who's in the meeting, can you please have your videos on? Right? You are live, and the people of South Africa would like to see who they're interacting with. Just a second. If you have got a problem with connectivity, then it's understandable if your video is it's off, right? So that will be my request. If everybody else should have his or her video on, mic muted.
Chair.
Yes.
May I just make a request? I usually experience connection problems once I switch on my video.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. That's the only reason why I never use it, even during the assembly, the sittings.
No, Honorable Ngqongqo, that's understandable. That's why I said, if someone
Yes,
is having connectivity problems, it's understandable.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
So if you are having that, it's quite understandable. But thank you very much. Sorry, CFO, to interrupt you. Let me allow the CFO to continue, and please bear with us. Just those are the House rules. Thank you so much. CFO, please proceed.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I've explained this slide. Can we go to the next slide, please? I think what we are highlighting in this slide, honorable members, we know that since 2008 to 2019, the cumulative increase in the average price of electricity through the tariff adjustments has been about fivefold. Well, we just want to highlight during that same period, Eskom's debt amount on its balance sheet, you will see that has increased from slightly below 50 billion rand in 2008 to where we found ourselves at the end of 2019, around 440 billion rand worth of gross debt. I think that's an important point to highlight, and I'll try to explain the link when we get to the future slides. If we continue, colleagues, Natasha, to the next slide. Yeah, I think this is an important slide. Honorable members, what I want to highlight here is that the actual return on assets that Eskom has achieved during this period of 2014 to 2019, and we're busy with the 2020 financials, you can see that it's basically hovering around 0%. And then when we make the losses, it goes below the 0%. More importantly, that what you will find that in the NERSA decision of the multi-year price determination 4, that after NERSA has adjusted for the 23 billion support that you've appropriated, the effective returns also get below 0. And what we're saying here, Chairperson, this does not allow Eskom the opportunity to generate enough cash to cover its cost of capital. If I then move on to the next slide. All we're doing here is to just highlight that the price of electricity is currently sitting on this dotted line, whereas previously when NERSA provided a longer term price part, the cone of acceptable, the lower and upper band, was between 100 cents to 130 cents. And in previous multi-year applications, what we found is institutions like BUSA, EIUG, as well as the IRP, have indicated that the price of electricity should be anywhere between 108 cents to 118 cents. And where we currently are at the end of 2019, at this 80 odd cents level, you can see the gap which creates cash flow pressure for Eskom. Chairperson, if we move to the next slide, I think it shows it a bit better. Yeah, just to highlight, you will see in our submission we've made, according to Eskom, we've calculated the gap of the price of electricity to be in the region of 25% between where we find ourselves at the end of MYPD 4 in constant 2020 rands of 100 cents per kilowatt, and all the previous indications from IRPs have said this is anything between 120 to 140 cents. What we are highlighting here, Chair, this is the migration that needs to be closed to contribute to Eskom's sustainability. I think it's appropriate for me, although I've not included in the slides, chairperson and members, to talk about Eskom's cost base. It is in our detailed submitted document. If I just talk on the total primary energy cost, on a compounded average growth rate basis, it increased from 2014 of about 70 billion rand to 2019 of 100 billion rand. That gives you an average compounded growth rate of 7.4% over the period. And if we look at our operating costs and maintenance, which includes employee benefits, that has grown, chairperson, from 46 billion in 2014 to 52 billion. That average compounded growth rate is 2.4%. What has Eskom also done during this period, especially the last 3 years? We've looked at our capital expenditure, and as we're approaching the end of the new build, which our colleagues will touch on later, our average capital spend in the initial period was averaging around 50, and it peaked at about 60 billion in 2017. Since 2017, chairperson, that 60 billion. In 2018, we spent 48 billion on capital expenditure. In 2019, we spent 34 billion. And for the last financial year, unaudited number is 24 billion, which shows that from an Eskom's perspective, we've reduced our capital expenditure significantly. We've kept our operating costs and maintenance relatively flat in line with inflation increases. And primary energy, although slightly above inflation, was tracking 7.4% in total. Chairperson, if I then move on in the interest of time, next slide. Just to highlight from an overall electricity price, a survey that was done by the Statista in 2018 reflects Eskom's price on the lower end there, as well as South Africa. The difference between the two, one is obviously at a Munich level and one is at an Eskom level compared to the other countries in that survey. If I move on, chairperson, the next slide. And similarly, a World Bank report that was done in 2016, specifically focusing on 39 sub-Sahara Africa countries, shows that Eskom at the lower end in terms of the price of electricity compared to other countries in Africa. Then, Chair, I think 2 more slides from my side. Slide 22, just to bring the committee up to speed in terms of, if we move on, Natasha, thank you. Around, carry on. 22, carry on. Next one, yep, stop here. Go one back. Thank you, one back. Yep. Chairperson, you will recall, and the members, that Eskom has reviewed the recent decisions of the regulator around the regulatory clearing accounts, and the decision that was ordered in Eskom's favor by the judge for the years 2015 to 2017. Our understanding in an application says that we don't believe that NERSA had applied the methodology correctly for the RCAs, which totals some 26 billion for that period. Chairperson, we've also made a submission for 2018 totaling 14 billion. That this court has not yet sat on the 14 billion decision, but just to highlight that the principles of the 2018 review are exactly the same as 2016 to 17. One more point to highlight on this slide. In terms of the RCA application and when a decision is made, Eskom then recovers that at a future point in time. This just indicates the difference in years between when the costs were incurred and when the recovery happens in NERSA's determinations of liquidations. And you could see it varies between 3 to 6 years based on historical decision. Chair, if you allow me, I think an important point for the members to understand, through the regulatory process, Eskom does not recover the time value of money. So these costs that we basically borrowed and these shortfalls in these years, we were funding it through borrowings. Although we recover from a regulatory mechanism the absolute differences that are deemed efficient, there is no allowance for the time value of money and the cost of borrowing. If I then move on, Natasha, you can skip all of this. The only other point, you can continue, Natasha, slide. I think you can go to, yeah, I think you can stop here as the conclusion. Chairperson, there's also the 69 billion, the equity support. We know the decision was in Eskom's favor. However, NASA has decided to appeal that decision, and we will wait for the process to unfold. I think, Chair, I think the important points to highlight here, we've demonstrated that we believe that the price needs to go up by around 25% in real terms, but there has to be a transition and a mechanism. We understand that it cannot go up, once-off adjustment and the impact on the economy. However, I think the other important point to highlight, Chair, is the importance of the user pay principle, and that for government to develop policies to protect vulnerable sectors and vulnerable communities, together with the policymakers and the regulator as part of this migration. That's an important factor to be taken into account. And at the end of the day, ultimately, if we cannot meet our debt service commitments from the amount that we generate through our operations, Chair, it leaves Eskom in a situation where we then approach yourself and the committee and government for support to meet those debt service commitments. Thank you, Chair, for your time. I'm done with my section.
Yeah, yes, CO, continue to attend.
Honourable Chair, thank you very much. If I can now ask Dan Mashigo, who up until very recently was looking after coal purchasers, to deal with the next section, please.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair. Good morning, honourable members. I'm battling to see the presentation, so I'm going to follow on my screen, and I will highlight on which slides I am. I have really acute connectivity problems, Chair. So I'm afraid if I turn on the video, I may actually lose the entire, a connection. Okay. Natasha, the first slide is basically slide number 30. Chair, in line with the conditions that were set on the special appropriation, we undertook an exercise to review all our coal contracts, and in doing that, we basically developed a model that looks at the bottom-up cost of mining per individual mine and contract. And based on that, we compared that to the price that we were paying. And the difference is basically what we deem as a profit margin that the different miners are making. The industry norms, and people that were outside the industry norms are the 7 suppliers that, Chair, we identified where we needed to go and renegotiate. And indeed, we've undertaken that particular, exercise because we deemed that the higher profit margin that they were making is not justifiable. And we approached these suppliers on individual basis. However, in response, when they counter proposed to our proposal to reduce the costs, they basically wanted Eskom to open up all their, a contract. Some of them have historical contracts which are, in Eskom terms, very favorably priced, and they still have a lot of, a volume to go. And that's basically where they were coming from. And some other suppliers saw an opportunity to basically increase their volume supply, to Eskom using, this particular process. I'm going to move on, Natasha, to the next slide, which is slide 31 of the deck. Chair, it's just to give a background that over and above the reduction or the attempt to reduce the contracted prices, especially for those contracts we contracted in 2018 or financial 2019, when we were in emergency procurement, We also optimizing our inventory holding by making sure that the tempo of our supply is optimum, and this is in lieu of the low energy a demand, and also our plant not performing quite well. So we are basically seeing our stock levels sitting at a very high level above what Eskom prescribes. Eskom prescribes overall system 33 days. We're currently sitting around 60 days, and the grid code requires us to keep 20 days. So as Eskom, we keep I think more stock than what the grid code requires. So we optimize the stock, because we don't want to sit with a lot of dead capital as working cost on the stockpile. So in reducing the coal volumes, it also became a complexity when we negotiating, because suppliers wanted to increase supply to Eskom, and they wanted that part to be to be addressed before they can negotiate. And out of the 7 suppliers that we identified through our internal process, I think we only had one successful outcome from this process, and that particular offer from the supplier, we expecting savings of about 127 million rand. It is currently going through our approval process, because it does entail expansion of the contract, which has to be approved internally in Eskom by board, and then it must also go to National Treasury. But the process is underway. And Chair, the next 2 slides are basically giving a summary per supplier. You can see supplier 1, we have 6 contracts with them, and they were not also willing, to deal with individual contracts, which we highlighted. They wanted to deal with other, historical contracts, longer term contracts we have with them, which are favorably priced, and their pricing offer on that basically would have meant you would give them a price increase on a lower base contract with a lot of volume to get a small benefit on very short-term contracts, which some of them will be expiring in 6 months, and Eskom becomes, a cash negative over, the period of the total portfolio, combined. So it was not presenting, a savings opportunity to Eskom, and which is why we could not move beyond, our proposal and their proposal. And the second supplier, Chair, similarly, they offered, an increase. However, they wanted, additional contract tenure, which is 3 years, and the 3-year additional contract tenure and the 10% reduction, on an Eskom cash basis, it would have resulted in a contract expansion of about 211%. And, what we are seeing is that, it does not give us the type of savings that justify, or which justify, adding, 3 years, on the supply, whereas we are seeing, a very low demand, so adding additional coal on an already, oversupply, a Eskom portfolio for the next 2 years, it basically, it's not helping, and it's not presenting a cash positive, situation. The third supplier, Chair, similarly, they wanted, us to increase the monthly contract offtake, and also increase, the total volumes, and basically no major, savings we were achieving, and the contracts basically are also close, to expiring. I'm going to move on to slide 33, which is the last slide on my deck. And the fourth supplier, the offer received was about a 4% price reduction on 2 contracts. And also they wanted us to enter into new contracts with them as part of the process. And their proposal is, Chair, is quite problematic. I mean, it goes outside the confines of the preferential procurement framework, and it will also not be fair to other suppliers who are potentially looking at supplying Eskom through a competitive bid. And the 4%, a proposal was way below what, our, aspiration as Eskom is. And 40 million tons to be added, for a 4% price reduction, it did not make business sense for Eskom. Whereas we are seeing very good prices from our open tender process we've run at Arnott, Tutuka, and other stations. And so, from a cash outflow perspective and savings, it is cheaper for us to enter into the new contracts and allow these other ones to expire, in a short period of time and not enter additional, coal contracts. Okay, so supplier 4, Chair, the savings opportunities are currently being explored. They have other, tenders which they've offered through the Kusile, RFP. The savings opportunities implementation is basically, based on us, reducing logistics cost, and the option basically is to collapse the high priced, existing contract and enter into the new contract which came through the procurement, process, and that's basically what we are negotiating, and we hopefully, will succeed with that, yeah. And supplier 6, Chair, we could not achieve any savings, similarly to the other suppliers where they wanted, additional, a monthly offtake, for a very minimal savings, which basically creates higher cash requirements. And I mean, our problem is not only cost, it's also cash. So we look at both, scenarios, which gives us the best positive, outlook, and we did not, succeed. And supplier 7, who also has one contract with us, they also wanted, an increase on their monthly contractual volume before they can, engage with us, I just picked up some background noise, Chair, sorry about that. So we can engage with them. So in a nutshell, Chair, I think supplier 4 is basically, where we are intending to finalize and get the savings, by transition from a current contract and entering into a new contract. We came through the procurement process. And most of these other contracts, Chair, are quite short-term, and they were deliberately entered into short-term in 2018, when we had an acute coal shortage, to buy us time to implement our long-term strategy, which is currently underway. And since then, Chair, I think we've been to the market with about 5 RFPs for more than 250 million tons, and some of them are in evaluation, and the Arnold one is almost, a complete, Chair. That's it, Chair Andre. Yeah, that's the last on my deck.
Honourable Chair, thank you very much to Dan. If I can take slide 34 as read, dealing with the declarations of interest, suffice to say that the declarations of interest at senior level management is, as we should expect, and for the board also 100%. Some of our more junior employees have had issues to complete the online declaration of interest, but even there, the progress is satisfactory under the circumstances. I'm now going to ask our Group Executive Human Resources, Ms. Elsie Pule, to briefly take us through some of the people issues that were raised.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Chair. Good morning to the members. If we can go to slide 35. Chair, I will use my slides so that I don't waste the committee's time. So when you go to slide 35, in the last 12 months, we implemented 2 levers in terms of addressing the issue of filling our critical vacancies. One of the levers was we were relinking the resources from your head office and support functions to the divisions, to make sure that the divisions have full accountability in terms of their mandates. We also had a once-off project which was approved as a special dispensation to fill the critical positions, particularly in transmission, generation, distribution, and ERI. So if you go to slide 36, this is just to give the committee an indication of the Eskom workforce profile. Eskom company employs about 37,000 employees. At Eskom Roadtech Industry, our subsidiary, we've got about 6,008, giving us a total complement for the group of 44,000 employees. About 33% are female, and about 87% are Black employees. And we're also showing you a breakdown in terms of occupational levels. You will see that the majority of our employees are in the skilled and the semi-skilled categories. In the managerial and professional areas, we've got about 6,500 employees. Our attrition stands at about 3.6%. We've also shown the committee here a breakdown in terms of our employees in the provinces, as well as a breakdown in terms of age. Just to give an indication in terms of our age profile, more than 40% of our employees are under the ages of 35. So if you go to slide 37, we're just giving an update in terms of how many people had been relinked from the head office functions to the divisions. That is just under 9,000 employees, Chair. And we have completed the process of relinking those resources. And we believe that at this point, relatively, we are sufficiently resourced to fulfill our mandate. And the next few slides, I won't go into them, is just a detailed breakdown of showing where the people moved from and where they have been allocated to. If you go to slide 39, we're also showing a breakdown in terms of our personnel. We're showing personnel in terms of categories, how many operators we have, technicians, artisans, etc. Because the question was also raised in terms of we might not be having sufficient resources where we need them. So we're showing the breakdown, and we're also showing the breakdown over the past few years to also address the issue of we had lost a lot of people over time. If I can use the first line on slide 39, Chair, just to show in terms of your technical, if I show the first line, technical official, you will notice that in 2013, we had about 7,200 employees. And in July, we're sitting at 6,600. So in line with our attrition and in line with our efficiencies as well, we don't believe that that will be a crisis. In other areas, you might find there had been higher attrition, and those are some of the areas we had addressed through the special dispensation that we implemented last year. So basically, Chair, that's our presentation in terms of addressing the issues of skills and resources at Eskom. I'll end there, Andre. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Elsie. Honourable Chair, I'm now going to hand over to our Chief Procurement Officer, Mr. Solly Chichangano, to deal briefly with slide 43.
Thanks, Andre, Chair, and members. I will not put my video on because my connectivity is also giving me a problem. The slide that Andre referred to is the review of contracts that identified and renegotiated. Similar to what Dan was reporting on the 7 suppliers, we also engaged a number of suppliers to ensure that we can get some savings. But what we are showing on slide 43 are the difficulties that we are experiencing as Eskom, because suppliers are demanding more volumes, and if we give more volumes outside the preferential procurement, then we will experience what Dan was also referring to, that they will be contravening the preferential procurement regulations. But however, we are continuing with other efforts to ensure that we can save some additional money for Eskom, as the presentation from the CFO
has indicated that we are bleeding from Eskom side, therefore we need additional savings. Thanks, Andre.
Thank you, Solly. Honourable Chair, we are then moving on to slide 45. Mr. Maharaj, who is the project director for the Kusile project, will take us through these slides.
Good morning, Chairman, Deputy Minister and members of the committee. I want to blame the weather today for the poor connectivity because I'm also experiencing very intermittent connectivity issues, Chairman. So with your indulgence, I will talk through the slides as put forward and controlled by Natasha. Chairman, in terms of the question and the query posed by the committee, there was clarity being sought with respect to the contractors that have been overpaid. So I've listed the key and the major contracts that are being investigated from at Kusile, these being ABB South Africa. There is a single contract in place with them. Tenova Mining and Minerals, the project has 3 contracts in place with that company. Tubular Construction Projects, there are 2 contracts. And Stefanuti Stocks, Basil Reed and Stefanuti Stocks Izazi JV, those are 2 separate contracts. The first 4 contracts that I've listed, Chairman, are being investigated through the SIU and the NPA. And in terms of the progress, they are still with specialist forensic planners and forensic cost engineers determining the quantums, the exact quantums. The SIU has fed back that they have consulted with and briefed their senior counsel on each of these matters. To date, there's been one particular case or one contract where there have been arrests. That is the investigation into the matter with Tubular Construction Projects. Natasha, next slide, please. I will then share a little bit more detail, Chairman. Specifically with respect to ABB, there are 2 key matters that are being investigated. The first matter that's being investigated is the at the time of the award of the contract to ABB, there were dates that were utilized that disqualified a supplier and motivation to award to ABB specifically. So that is a forensic planning exercise that is being undertaken to actually prove that particular claim as to the award being potentially irregular. During 2016 and 2017 as well, Chairman, there were 4 major variation orders that were issued to the supplier. So it goes back to February 2016 and the last being in October 2017. And the sum total of these is just a little over R1 billion. The investigations are progressing again from a forensic quantification perspective because the substantiation documentation and the records for these particular variations are either not present or very, very sketchy at best. Moving on, Natasha, to slide number 47. This deals with Tenova. Again, on this particular contract, we are dealing with an estimated value of 735 million rand, where there was a settlement during March 2016 and January 2017. The particulars to assess and verify the delays and the costs claimed is what the SIU is probing and investigating before formalizing the charges that will be put forward to the courts. Slide 48, Natasha, please. With respect to tubular construction, there are 2 contracts, and it is in this particular contract where arrests have been made last year in December, and the cases are ongoing. There is an additional investigation being undertaken by the SIU because this contract stemmed out of what is commonly known as a de-scoping. So there was a de-scoping exercise undertaken with GE. The contractor originally contracted to build the air-cooled condensers at Kusile, and this was then subsequently awarded to Tubular. So both sides, the awarding of the work to Tubular and the payments made to Tubular, as well as the de-scoping exercise with GE are being investigated. The second Tubular contract on slide 49 deals with our wastewater treatment plant. Again, this was a de-scoping exercise where the original contract was awarded to Mott McDonald PDNA and then later de-scoped and awarded to Tubular. So these investigations, like I mentioned, are underway and being substantiated in terms of the quantums. Slide 50, please, Natasha. Dealing with Stefanuti stocks, Basil Reed, commonly referred to as package 16 at Kusile. During 2015, up until the end of 2018, there were payments made to the contractor with respect to a settlement agreement, very, very inconsistent in terms of the actual payments made during that period of time, where P's and G's or preliminaries in general had varied between 15 and 50 million rand per month. The project director that took over in 2018 put a stop to all of those interim agreements and payments, and the SIU is quantifying these values as well. Slide 51 deals with Stefanuti Stocks Izazi JV. This particular contract was terminated. There were a number of disputes and claims put forward by the contractor, which have been refuted and disputed by Eskom, and the particulars for these claims are being investigated and quantified by the SIU. Slide 52 deals with other contracts in place at Kusile. These particular contracts are being reviewed and investigated internally by Eskom's Audit and Forensic Department, and the investigations there are underway. There are areas within these investigations where the assistance of the SIU is being sought so that we could pursue civil claims against the former employees as well as the companies that are implicated in that. Chairman, I've added in slide 53, and I think this is purely to clarify there are two very different matters being dealt with. Natasha, next slide, please, 53. Commonly reported in the press, there is the issue around the overpayment around the 4 billion rand, as well as a 5 billion rand that is associated with a separate claim that Eskom has lodged against Tegeta, and this is for non-delivery against the contract that was in place with Tegeta at that point in time. So it's important to distinguish between the 4 billion rand potential overpayments at Kusile versus the 5 billion rand claim that's been lodged with the business rescue practitioners with respect to Tegeta. Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, I will also deal with very, very briefly. There is a lot of detail that has been supplied as part of the report with respect to the question raised around the Kusile and Medupi power plant costs increases, overruns, and the first few slides deal with the historic matters in terms of the decisions around Eskom being allowed to actually construct the new power plants. Albeit the key takeaway is that the delays in the decisions to actually execute these particular projects put Eskom on the back foot in terms of not allowing adequate time in terms of planning and the front-end engineering and design that's required on large build programs or capital projects of this nature. Natasha, moving on to slide 56 and 57. Chairman, I've tried to summarize in these two particular slides, and I will not go through them, but it provides a high-level summary with respect to the cost overruns for both Medupi and Kusile, and it also deals with some of the issues that Eskom, or measures that Eskom has implemented in terms of trying to curb these cost overruns. Slides 58 and 59 just provide the benchmarks for both Medupi and Kusile from a time perspective as well as a cost perspective. And again, it contrasts the front-end engineering and design that's required for capital projects of this nature versus the reality that Eskom was faced with once the decision for Eskom to execute these projects was finally given. So slide 58 provides the cost, the schedule benchmarks, while slide 59 provides the cost benchmark for both Medupi and Kusile as compared to international benchmarks as well. I'll not go into the detail. The numbers are there as well as in the report provided. I'm going to skim through from slide 60, Chairman, and this elaborates a little bit more on the key drivers for the cost movements, cost escalations, and in many cases, the underestimations made. So in terms of the setup and development, the pressure to actually bring the new capacity online did not assist the teams in terms of adequate time for front-end engineering and design that was required. Slide 61 highlights the fact that the actual execution of the projects started without there being a firm design in place, and in the same breath trying to meet a very, very fast-tracked schedule. At that point in time, Eskom had accepted that responsibility not to belabor that point and get the projects moving. We also went with a strategy of multiple contracts. So the upfront integrated schedule was very, very disjointed, which subsequently leads to additional claims and movements from one contract to the other, just adds costs to the project overall. Contractor expertise at the time that the contracts for both Medupi and Kusile were awarded was also very much in short supply. At the time of awarding the Medupi and Kusile projects, the number of capital projects in the energy sector were at an all-time high, and the expertise required to execute not freely available, and hence the premiums paid as a result of that supply demand in the market. Natasha, moving on to slide 62, project integration. With the multi-contract strategy that Eskom pursued, integration is a major issue, which at the time was not fully understood nor catered for. The lack of this integration in contracting strategy has led to a large the quantum in terms of the cost overruns experienced at both Medupi and Kusile. Both projects also experienced a large number of force majeure type strikes, for various reasons. And collectively, on each of the sites, almost 24 months in terms of the delays as a result of these. Contractor performance and productivity, a key issue that has cost both projects additional money. Natasha, moving on to slide 63. I think I've covered this, Chairman, in terms of, next slide, please, Natasha. As I mentioned on slide 63, we cover the issues around the lack of the competent or insufficient supply in terms of the market, and Eskom being left with contractors with resource constraints. Both projects also took on a strategy to partner with multinational engineering companies. For a long time, the integration between Eskom resources and these multinational engineering companies was not satisfactory in terms of lots of duplication of effort and a lack of understanding of the Eskom and country requirements in terms of governance that led to there not being a common understanding of how to execute. Slide 54, Chairman. The latest in the last sort of 2 to 3 years with respect to investigations into the corruption, they need to proceed, but these also lead to delays where the integration effort, when a single contractor stops working or is not able to work, that leads to on-costs and or delays with other contractors as well. So in as much as we are rectifying the fraudulent activities, these do cause other impacts in terms of the projects themselves. We've also seen a large number of companies go into business rescue and the financial stability. In terms of these, we have large gaps in terms of the project where contractors are no longer able to fulfill their obligations, and these subsequently lead to delays with the contractors that follow on from that work. And in terms of the Eskom processes, in terms of filling that gap, it could take anything between 9 and 24 months before new contractors are engaged and working on site. And like I said, these just leads to there being additional costs and or time delays with the subsequent or follow-on contractors. Chairman, in terms of slides 65, 66, and 67, I will not go through them in detail, but it provides the reasoning and some of the risk mitigation measures that we have put in place at both the projects. The last two slides deal with where the costs are currently, which is slide 68, Natasha. For both Medupi and Kusile, the costs that are indicated there at 145 and 161.4 billion rand respectively have not changed since 2015, which is when the last time the overall business cases for the projects were reviewed. All indications that we will complete these projects within those approved, currently approved budgets that we have in place, Chairman. The last slide deals with the commercial operation status of each of the projects. As you will see that at Medupi, Unit 6 all the way down to Unit 1 are in commercial operation, and it's expected that the last unit, Unit 1, will go into commercial operation first quarter of next year. At Kusile, we have one unit that is in commercial operation, and Units 2 and 3 will be done within this current financial year. At Kusile specifically, we are experiencing problems with Unit 3 currently. We are dealing with those issues. there are major technical issues that we are resolving, but we still have the forecast that we will have Unit 3 into commercial operation within this current financial year from an Eskom perspective. Chairman, that brings me to an end. I do see that I've maybe taken 7 minutes more than was allowed. Thank you.
Thanks, Avin. Honourable Chair, with your permission, I know we are over time. If we can quickly run through the remainder of the slides before we hand back to you, just to do a time check, please.
Yeah, that's fine. Let me give you up to Korapas and CO, please end at Korapas, so that
right, thanks.
Allow the members to also interact with the presentations.
Thank you, Chair. We'll speed it up. So just on the following slide there, Chair, slide 71, we are investigating 39 different contracts with significant cost overruns, and we will in due course report back to the committee on those issues. If I may now hand over to our Chief Legal Counsel, Mr. Bartlett Hewu, who will take us through the cost recovery update. Bartlett.
Honourable Chair, Honourable Deputy Minister, honourable members of the committee, I will take slides 76 to 80 as read in the interest of time. I will be ready to field any questions that members may have. The only thing that I wish to highlight is the recent 3.8 billion rand claim that Eskom and the SIU have made against former executives of Eskom, board members, and also Tageta Exploration and Resources, owners, the Guptas. We are busy with the SIU, as you would have heard from Mr. Maharaj and the GCE, with other continuing investigations in the background. We will be coming back to the committee with a revised report detailing the actions taken towards recoveries. Thank you, Honourable Chair.
CO.
Thank you very much, Bartlett. I will now hand over to Mr. Rulani Matabula, who is our... yes, Honourable Chair. If I may hand over to Mr. Rulani Matabula, who is our Acting Group Executive for Generation, to deal with the load shedding issue.
Thanks, Andre. Honourable Chair and the members of the committee, for the sake of time, allow me to quickly go through this feedback that we have submitted to you. Just an overview on the July and August recent load shedding that we had. We experienced around 4,000 megawatts loss, which was mainly due to trips at our different plants. We also had an impact due to the unavailability of our Camden power station, which had to be taken off due to unavailability of ashing space. We also at the time had Quebec unit number 2 off, and we also had 3 units, one at Medupi and 2 at Kusile, which were not available to support the grid at the time. We also needed to manage our reserves very well at the time, and that combined had a huge impact on our supply. To manage time, if you look at slide number 82, just an outlook of how the system looks from July 2020 to March 2021, you would realize that our demand and our available capacity shows that we will be constrained for the near future for the months that we have indicated there. And if you continue on slide 83, it shows the same constraint continuing from April 2021 to March 22, but showing a recovery on available capacity. Just to quickly talk to how we're dealing with this thing and going into the future, on our conclusion, you would realize that the focus is mainly on the unplanned load loss to keep it way below the 11,000 megawatts. Also to maintain our diesel supply, and also to bring back the units or to reliability at Medupi and Kusile, as my colleague has alluded. The good news is that we have already started bringing back the units that were taken off at Camden. So that will help in supporting the grid and minimizing the impact of load shedding going forward. There's a lot of work that we have put in place currently to maintain our plant based on our reliability maintenance plan, and that will give us the assurance that we need to keep to meet the demand going forward, Chair. I'm trusting that the rest of the detail it's at your disposal and has been read, and I would like to end it here. Thank you.
CEO? CEO?
Thank you very much, Rulani. Honourable Chair, in the interest of time, if I may, yes, Honourable Chair.
No, I was saying, please.
Yes,
yeah, no, I was saying it was quiet, and I was saying.
I think in the interest of time, can conclude the presentation here. Okay. Honourable Chair, if we can take the remainder of the presentation, which deals with Eskom's contribution to broad-based Black economic empowerment, take that as read. We'd be happy to take any questions that the committee might have on that, but we are trying to respect the time contract, so let's take that as read and hand back to you. And thank you again for the opportunity, honourable members and honourable Chair.
Prof, anything before we come in? DM?
Yeah. I'm trying to unmute myself. I'm very grateful for this opportunity. I think we've given you a snapshot as to the challenges and the opportunities that we have as Eskom, and we value the support, I think, that you give us as a committee. Not only the support, but the guidance, I think, that you provide, which is necessary as part of a democracy, and we value that a lot. Thank you.
Thanks, Prof. DM?
No, Chair, I'm covered. I may come back if when members engage where there are issues, perhaps I will then come back at that stage.
Okay. Thank you so much, Team Eskom. There is a National Treasury, and remember we had an interaction with National Treasury yesterday. I don't know, Ravesh, is there anything pressing from your side you'd like to
add? Chair, through you, Chair, there's nothing pressing from my side, thanks. But we have I think we have a separate presentation on the compliance to the conditions, which we can do later, if required.
But can you summarize in a minute compliance?
Chair, through you, in a minute, what I can do is quickly just flight this presentation for you, Chair, and I'll just just take you through to the main slide, which is in terms of the conditions. Basically, what we have here is we have 3 conditions that were partially complied. And then there were 2 conditions that were non-complied with. In terms of the partial compliance, those three, conditions 3, which relates to the debt and interest, payment, schedule, so it wasn't actually in full, or the detail wasn't provided as at the end of March, but they have, subsequently did provide, the detail in terms of the full, repayment schedule, over the life of the loans. And then under condition 9, Chair, through you, in terms of the cost and the, and the timing of, the completion of, Kusile and Madupi, that information now has been provided in the June report, and then would to, condition 12, there was a, in the Eskom presentation. Then, Chair, quickly on the non-compliance, there was two conditions that were non-complied with, which is condition number 6. Which is in addition to the disposal of the Eskom finance company, which was a target date of the end of March. So they were not able to to dispose of that, but they are now in the process of a new bidding process, and we understand that that target date is now moved to the end of March 2021. And Chair, then the last condition, which was not complied to, was which was number 16, which was in relation to the to the implementation of the remuneration standards. I think for DPE's approval with regards to that. And then, Chair, lastly, quickly, if I just go through the to the proposed conditions for 2021. We have engaged with DPE. We have, engaged with Eskom on the proposed conditions for 2021, and that's been signed off by the, it's been signed off by the Minister of Finance, and it has been sent through, the two committees, which is SCOA and SCOA. So at the moment, what we have is that Eskom is reporting, its compliance on the, on the 1920 conditions until we can then, have the okay from the two committees to say that they're happy with the conditions for 2021. I've summarized it very, very quickly. There were about 7 slides, but I think that's, sums it up. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ravesh. Please take off your presentation from the screen. Thank you. And thank you, Ravesh. DM, Chair, CEO, a lot of honorable members are just struggling to connect, and courtesy of load shedding. So I'm getting, they're just busy calling me here, so they can't effectively execute their oversight responsibility. So that's how far this load shedding goes. But we'll try. Honorable members, I got some messages about some of the honorable members who are about to, whose mobile phones or computers are about to die, and I would like to start with them. I've got Honorable Nhlangwini, Honorable Nkwankwa, Honorable Mlenzana. Let's continue then.
Matafa.
Honorable Matafa. Honorable Sheikh.
Dennis Joseph, Chair.
Honorable Joseph. Honorable Kaiso. Honorable Kaiso.
Peaches.
Honorable Peters. Okay, that's it. Honorable Nhlangwini, Honorable Nkwankwa, Mlenzana, Matafa, Sheikh, Joseph, Kaiso, Peters. Let's try maximum No injury time, honorable members. Please time yourselves. It's 4 minutes, and let's run. Honorable Mhlangwini.
Thank you very much, Chair. And unfortunately, I won't be able to even switch on my camera. You have seen how dark it is where I'm sitting. So anyway, you won't be able to see it. So I'll shoot straight, Chair, to some of the overpayments that were done. I think on slide, I can't remember the slides because it's 99 slides that we have received. There's a one that state 1 to 3 until 5, and then number 5, various site service contracts not into the scope of SIU. It's about 180 million. If we can get clearance on that, what is those contracts and over the contracts of the service contracts. And then also, Chair, just on the overpaid contracts, yet again, I understand that some of these cases are with law enforcement agency and so forth. But we need also from their internal process of Eskom, how far are they with their internal process, as well with employers that are still with them, and by when will these cases be wrapped up? Because we are not talking here about 10 rand overpayment, we are talking here about billions. And what measures have been put in place to ensure that this overpayments doesn't happen again, with the internal audit process strengthened and all of that? Because it's good and well that you are having the cases with the SIU and all of this other law enforcement agencies, but you within your internal process will also have to strengthen your internal process. So I'd like to know what is the process thereof. And then on the to Elsie's slide on the raise slide of the 30% of Africans, I would just like to maybe perhaps get a total breakdown within which positions are that 33%. It's all and well we are having 30% of African people in positions, but in which positions are they? And basically on the top level, want to see that they are also getting to be your CEOs, CFOs, and all of those things. If we can get a clearer understanding of that. And Chair, I'm running very fast. Am I still fine? Am I still fine? Oh.
Yes, fine.
Because they are rush a bunch. All right, and then what is the current state of Eskom's cash flow position, taking into account the impact of COVID-19? What is the amount of debt that was projected to be raised for the 2020-2021 financial year, and how has this number changed due to the impact of COVID on Eskom's revenue? And that's all for me for now, Chair. I will come back when we have more time. And
30 seconds.
Do I still have 30 seconds?
Yeah.
Let me shoot to slide 36 then. Eskom have shown the employment equity achievements, but how does this compare against the entity's targets? What is the average age of Eskom employers, as age profiles reveals that there's a significant number of staff that are in their twilight years and their careers? And how is Eskom nurturing young talent as part of their succession plans? Thank you, Chair.
There you go, thanks. Honorable Kwankwa. Yeah. Honorable Kwankwa. Kwankwa, are you there? Honorable Kwankwa, are you there? Okay, Honorable Lenzana, please come in. Honorable Lenzana, please come in. Okay. Honorable Matafa, please come in.
Thanks very much, Chair. Greetings to the DM of Eskom, CEO and the team, and those that are from National Treasury. Chair, I will be very, very brief, but maybe just to start on a lighter note. I'm not happy with my lighting because of shading. For me, it's deja vu, because the last time we went to Eskom for oversight visit, we experienced load shedding. So I'm experiencing it again. Chair, maybe let me welcome the presentation and state from the onset that I'm very happy with the detail. It's very detailed. And also to acknowledge the fact that it is this committee that has called for a forensic audit or a forensic investigation as far as the cost overruns on the build program is concerned. Now, a direct question on the overpayments that were uncovered. Are we looking at recovering those particular amounts? Because I hear there was an arrest, there is an investigation, but when the slide where we are looking at the recoveries that we are aiming for, these companies that are identified are not reflecting. The second one, Chair, around overpayments. We have once learned of a three-way invoice verification process that is used in the finance unit of Eskom. Could this overpayments, where there are no pure corruption, be related to this particular process? And if so, what is the status of this particular process? Are we still using it? And if we are using it, what are the safety nets that have been put around this particular process to ensure that there are no leakages? Chair, the third point is on the issue again of forensic audit and investigation. The CEO speaks of companies that are red flagged, and I think he gave a number of 39. I'm interested to know, without discussing the merits, pardon me, how are these contracts identified? Because, Chair, like I always say, when we account as public reps, we account to constituencies. There is a burning issue around a case that has a contract that is being cancelled. One, it's an African entrepreneur. Two, it's a woman, and this contract is being cancelled. It's around the diesel issue. It will be very interesting to clarify the perception around African contracts or contracts that have been awarded to Africans being targeted. Hence, I'm asking particularly on the process that is being applied. Now, Chair, maybe it will be proper as well, once the investigation around the red flagged contract is done, Eskom should report to the committee on the demographics of those particular companies and how do these demographics impact on the BBBEE as well as other transformation programs that Eskom would have